And you want me to keep them off your backs?
Please, Joe, and you can help with training.
Hey, anything else you want me to do?
Please, Joe, until the Cup final.
Okay, Flash. I'll do it. But you better win the cup.
This is Joe Bullet, the super macho, all-stoic, quick-thinking, sports car driving, ass-kicking and ever-reliable protector of Johannesburg, South Africa. The film, aptly named after its main character, has the friendly neighborhood PI entrusted with the safety of a local soccer team, the Eagles, from threat of a gang of mobsters who wish to unalive their top players and tank their championship run. But with Joe on the job, it's curtains for the mob, which makes this film's premise by all means as simple as they come. However, whilst Joe Bullet's reputation in the film's world precedes him,
what's wrong?
Joe Bullet's coming.
The same can't be said for his reputation in the real world, which is quite unfortunate for what is arguably Africa's first blaxploitation icon. And speaking of icons, make sure you karate chop that subscribe icon down below to join the African Entertainment Reviews community for more videos just like this. Getting back to it, blaxploitation films were a variant of the exploitation film genre, with their name quite literally being a portmanteau of the words black and exploitation. These films existed mainly in the early 70s, between 1970 and 1975, and were characterized by being low to mid-budget, non-mainstream, starred black actors in key roles, and were originally intended for the US black urban audiences. And so it was made common practice in the early 70s across all major film genres, from horror movies to crime films, spreading all the way to the westerns, to produce a blaxploitation film title for the accommodation of the black urban audiences. Most, if not all, of these movies would feature strong black protagonists with anti-authoritarian attitudes, predominantly black urban settings, custom soundtracks, mostly either R&B or jazz, use of strong language.
You wouldn't know Egyptian cotton if Pharaoh himself sent it to you, you knockoff wearing motherfucker.
Presence of high levels of violence and culturally specific dress codes. Basically, these films were touted to be black as f***, of which, with such a reputation, these films are the center of a lot of criticism and controversy from parts of the black community who claimed that these films were responsible for the propagation of black stereotypes.
The concept of super blacks and their relationship to reality brings controversy. Some critics say that the Shafts and the Slaughters are unreal super blacks, and that Priest, the Harlem dope pusher in Superfly, is a negative image for black youngsters.
But drive black audiences into the cinema, as was their original intention, blaxploitation films did. And despite all the criticism leveraged against them, they still found a fair bit of fanfare. And so, even with that brief overview of the blaxploitation film era, you might still be left wondering, where does Africa fit into all of this? You know, with the entire continent being predominantly, well, black, with our internal film culture being generally and quite inherently characterized by black castings, what good does a blaxploitation film, meant, mind you, to drive in black audiences to the cinema, do in a continent that majorly has just that? To answer that, we need to step back again into the early 70s, however this time not in the US of A, but into the S of A. South Africa, South Africa. Well, the historical context here is that between the years of 1948 to 1994, the South African state was under a harsh institutionalized system of racial segregation, installed by the white-led Nationalist Party, a little period most of you might be familiar with known as apartheid. Ergo, for all South African financial sectors, the film industry included, the black population was frozen out. Thus, their representation and even inclusion in the filmmaking process was nigh on non-existent. Therefore, from an African perspective, the blaxploitation film boom of the early 70s presented a unique opportunity for black film in South Africa. Heck, it even went ahead to spawn its own portmanteau in Zaxploitation. And the film that kicked off this movement was none other than Joe Bullet. One doesn't even need to peer too deep into the Joe Bullet film to recognize it as a blaxploitation film, as it has all the makings of one. This film is as low budget as they come, more on that later, was definitely non-mainstream as its reputation or lack thereof shows, and was so predominantly black that not even the wide shots that capture entire crowds have a person who is not black in them. On the other hand, Bullet, played by Ken Gampu, like all his other contemporaries, is a classic leading man and carries with his performance characteristics that were common for blaxploitation film leads. He has the steeliness of Shaft, is depicted to be as suave as Dolomite, possesses the fighting prowess of Black Dynamite, and donned a chic wardrobe much like Superfly's priest. Put quite simply, they try to craft a character of the model of all the men want to be him, and all the ladies want to be with him. And for the early 70s, I do not think they were far off. Bullet fit right in with the other Blaxploitation film protagonists, even coming with his own custom soundtrack.
Joe Bullet. He's the man who fights evil. He's the man who fights crime. He's the man no one can tie down.
And a super shiny bald
Motherfucker.
Okay, we're not gonna talk about the head. Not talking about the head. All in all, this 1973 film was meant, like all other Blaxploitation films, to drive in Black South African audiences to the cinema, with of course the bonus effects of capturing their hearts and inspiring them to greatness, all of which lasted for the incredibly extended period of 2 screenings. Yes, that is absolutely right. This film was banned after its 2 screenings in the Johannesburg township of Soweto. Now, at this point, I had already watched the film, at least the recovered version that is on YouTube, which has a more polished quality to it. However, it is missing approximately 20 minutes worth of bridging scenes. But I simply had to go through it again to see if there was any anti-colonial or anti-governmental propaganda messaging within it that would warrant the apartheid government to ban this film after just 2 screenings. And well, surprise surprise, there was none. Upon further research, I found the reasons listed in the ban order to be as follows. The film depicts a black man wielding a gun, driving a nice car, and living in a nice apartment. For the apartheid government, this was the biggest blight in historical cinema, as a film that didn't feature a white person, especially in the lead role, but in its place stood a strong, charismatic black man who saves the day and gets the girl, was simply unacceptable. The censorship board cited that the film threatened the societal status quo, in that it uplifted the Black South African citizens' aspirations not only in their day-to-day but also in their aspirations to have a more active part in the filmmaking process. But it is hard to keep a good man down, and even harder to keep a good black man down. Wait, that sounded way more black supremacist than I intended it to. What I meant is, the Joe Bullet film actually had a silver lining. Quite a couple, actually. First, through the producer Tony van der Merwe, who played a significant role in the existence of the Joe Bullet film, as, again, no black South African was actually allowed to take part in the filmmaking process. A government-sponsored subsidy scheme was set up to provide financial support, however limited, to the production of black film. This was known as the B scheme, and despite its limitations in the kinds of films that could be produced as well as the financial muscle made available to fund these projects, quite a number of films were made under the B scheme, which created opportunities for black South African artists and thespians to get significant roles and offered to the black South African audience movies that catered to their interests and had proper representation of their stories. And the second silver lining, despite not being as significant as what we have just discussed, Joe Bullet actually commanded a sequel in Bullet on the Run. And whilst I quite haven't watched that one yet, I think it's pretty neat that he got another run. Now, I'm not one to pretend that the Blaxploitation film genre did not have its faults. In fact, I quite agree with most of the criticisms leveled against it. But it also had its pros, and the more that I look into it, this Zaxploitation film genre variant of the Blaxploitation film genre variant of the exploitation film genre, I don't know, I did that to myself. What I'm saying is, the Zaxploitation film genre is a net plus from the Blaxploitation film era. And where it did take a while for the South African film industry to become more adaptive of its black excellence as it is today, I think it's pretty incredible and incredibly funny that it might all be attributed to Joe Bullet. It can be argued that the era of the Blaxploitation films is long gone. However, we have seen some of our beloved classics come back with sequels and even reskins in different media forms. And all I'm saying is, I'm pretty open to a Joe Bullet revival. I mean, down south you guys are doing an absolutely amazing job in the animation sphere, so if you want to give us an animated miniseries of Joe Bullet, I would binge the ever-living hat out of it. And that's pretty much all from me. If you would like to see more from the quick-witted, ever-charming, video essay making, out of adjectives having Uncle Omari, then subscribe to the channel or check out any of these other videos that are already out for your enjoyment.
Do it, man. Do it at once. Do it.
And I simply cannot wait to see you all in the next one.
Joe works. Joe works. You will see that giant of a man.